The rise of conservatism was a modern-day political revolution that aimed to reduce the U.S. government's influence on its citizens. The modern ideology of conservatism stemmed from a belief that the individual could govern himself more effectively than the federal government. Conservatism focused on reducing federal subsidies and sought to increase individual contribution to society. Conservatism also sought to give back power to individual states and their people. But during the 70s and 80s, conservatism took on a more moral approach. Many conservatives saw the progressive movements of the 70s, such as hippie culture, as degradation of American values. Modern conservatives sought to reinstate and defend those values from the progressive left. The modern movement of conservatism became popular thanks to a well-known Arizona senator, Barry Goldwater. Goldwater essentially spearheaded the crusade for conservatism by advocating for smaller government, moral values, and anti-communist sentiment. Many liberals were vehemently against Goldwater's far-right beliefs, but many conservatives saw this as a radical method of change. Many conservatives believed that big government spending was ruining America. Goldwater also pushed for labor union reform and sought to decrease federal interference in states' rights. This made him widely popular with the white Southern voters. During his 1964 bid for president, Goldwater was the first Republican to win all the Deep South states: South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. However, Goldwater lost a one-sided election to Lyndon B. Johnson. Goldwater had converted many of the Deep South states and changed the demographics of Republican voters nationwide. This set the scene for the Republican Golden Boy, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, to many conservatives, was the greatest president in modern U.S. history. The former actor turned governor sought the presidency by campaigning on many of the similar ideas set forth by Goldwater's fiscal conservatism. Reagan was widely underestimated, which he saw as an advantage. It allowed him to push for more comprehensive legislation. As governor of California, the largest state economy in the Union, Reagan cut government spending and made government more efficient. During his presidency, Reagan sought to bring down the Russians, citing the Soviet Union as the evil empire. Reagan also set a new standard for economic policies. Dubbed Reaganomics, Reagan ideologically pursued the concept of trickle-down economics. This essentially states that if the top 10% succeeds, so will the rest 90% by virtue of supply-side economics. Reagan also gave the largest tax cut in American history and increased government spending to fight the Soviets. After Reagan's famous "Tear Down This Wall" speech, the Soviet Union released their grasp on Berlin. Reagan also negotiated with then Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev to initiate disarmament of nuclear weapons worldwide in the INF Treaty. After this, Reagan's domestic and foreign policy was seen as highly effective, helping both the American people and defeating America's adversaries. Reagan also moved on to the war on drugs by authorizing more militant actions and stricter prison sentences for drug offenses. For most conservatives, Reagan was the defender of morality and individualism, two core values of America. Even Nancy Reagan, the First Lady, who spearheaded the Just Say No anti-drug movement, sought to be the defender of American family values. In totality, Reagan created the modern version of conservatism and permanently shaped the Republican Party for future generations. After Reagan's era, the Republican Party gained a great deal of followers. States in the South, especially white voters, loyally became part of the party's base. Reagan proved that there were many people in America that still hung onto the old traditional family values. Reagan also brought upon a widely replicated economic model. Reaganomics, as it was called, was seen as a success. This led to widespread belief among party Republicans that supply-side economics was the future of America. Fiscal conservatism gained credibility during Reagan's term. However, Reagan and the conservatives in the White House were not without their faults. Reagan's Iran-Contra affair became a great scandal for the Democrats to attack Reagan with. The scandal occurred when the U.S. government sold arms to Iran and then used that money to fund the far-right Contras in Nicaragua. The scandal threatened to undermine people's trust for the government, but by the end of Reagan's presidency, more Americans remembered the fall of the Soviet Union than the Iran-Contra affair. In fact, Reagan ended his presidency with a 63% approval rating. one of the best in American history.